Today, I'm here to answer a question that plagues my mind every day. Who would win in a fight? A favorite around here, Shrek, or Sully from Monsters Inc. These two are actually very similar in a lot of ways. Both are large monsters that scare people, both are shown to be very strong, and both have a much smaller, annoying sidekick. This is where the similarities end, however. To really know who would win in a fight, we really need to delve into who these two are. Let's start with Shrek. I've talked a bit about him on this channel, although it has been a while. From the beginning, Shrek, being an ogre, inspires fear and dread into the hearts of normal men. He lived alone in the swamp for most of his life before being forced into his adventures that leave him with Fiona and eventually an entire band of friends and family. He went from loner to family man, a true hero's arc, even if he did abandon the mantle of leadership. Shrek at his heart didn't belong in Far, Far Away. He belongs in the swamp. He definitely has physical strength and can take on opponents bigger than himself, as evidenced when he fought Dragon to save Fiona. Shrek is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to raw power. He's quite nimble too, despite his size, easily outmaneuvering Captain Hook and his cohorts. Although it should be noted he is very small by ogre standards. It's tough to say if his nimbleness is unique to him or if others of his species would share it. They're certainly strong too though. He does have a weakness when it comes to being outsmarted by magical foes, however. He was unwittingly turned human and then unwittingly almost erased from existence because he didn't consider the fine print. You'd think after this happened to him once he'd be hesitant to deal with someone magical again. Magic is quite potent against him, and he doesn't really seem to have any defense against it. Though this is not to say that Shrek is dumb. He is a flawed hero and is prone to emotional outbursts and rash decisions. He does have survival instincts though, and he knows when to change tactics. He has no formal education or training, and his parents left him at a very young age. He had to learn how to defend himself to survive from frequent bandit raids, and his entire adult life is filled with constant danger and conflicts. Shrek is no slouch when it comes to fighting and taking on foes well beyond his own strength. Next, let's look at Sully from Monsters Inc. To start, Sully works at Monsters Incorporated, a company responsible for harvesting fear from children to use as a fuel source to power everything in their world. Sully is massive, ferociously strong with horns and claws. He has bright blue fur and a terrifying roar. He's good at his job. He's the top scarer at the company, with a slimy, man-sized chameleon being his chief rival, a weird, cunning, overgrown chameleon. When I first watched this movie, I honestly thought his boss was scarier looking than any of them. I mean, he's a giant scorpion, spider, crab man. But empirically, Sully is scarier than them, I guess. I also believe that Sully is larger than Shrek too. He isn't, however, a big fish in a small pond. The abominable snowman is bigger than him, and his boss, like I said, is a gross, disgusting monster, and his world is filled with plenty of giant monsters on par with creatures Shrek has faced. But how tall is Sully exactly? It's hard to get a sense of scale within his world of eldritch horrors, but fortunately we have our own world, specifically the closet doors they use as gateways into our world. Boo's closet is a typical North American style closet door, and we get many shots of Sully standing next to it. As we can see, he is taller than the door, but only just so. This would place Sully just over the typical North American door frame of 78 to 80 inches tall. Sully is likely 7'2" to possibly 7'4" tall based on his slouching posture to make it through the door in most scenes. We also know for certain that Boo's closet door is a North American door because of this shot at the end of the movie. See that? That's Jesse from Woody's Roundup. Woody and his friends enjoyed mass popularity until the space race.
Once the astronauts went up, children only wanted to play with space toys.
And then became so rare outside the US that Japanese collectors were willing to pay top dollar for their acquisition by the late 90s.
I have your attention. Imagine we added another zero to the price, huh? What? Yes! Yes! You got a deal! I'll be on the next flight to Japan!
Anyways, he is significantly wider than the door too, however, so he would have a lot of strength. Before looking into the subject, I always had the impression that Sully was much taller than Shrek, but after looking at him compared to the door, it's clear that the difference is not that great. Certainly not as great as the gap that exists between Shrek and some of the other ogres. They don't have magic in the world of Monsters Inc., but they have advanced science that can run on the emotional energy of fear or laughter, but they also have instant teleportation through their closet doors. I don't know how Sully would react to magic, but he's at least familiar with the concept of teleportation and science that's basically indistinguishable from magic. It should also be noted that Sully is not dumb and worked with the proper authorities to catch his corrupt boss in an impromptu sting operation. Sully does have a formal education, even if he didn't graduate and never took it seriously. So finally the moment comes. Who would win in a fight? It would come down to who wants to win more, and motivation has always been a problem for Sully. If Boo was threatened in any way, I think Sully would put up a really good fight, and likewise for Shrek if it was one of his kids that were in danger. However, this wouldn't be true if Sully's opponent was Shrek. Sully would stand no chance. Sully has claws, horns, and a bit of reach over Shrek, but Sully, despite being a top scarer and very strong, has no fight history other than a frail, much smaller adversary that he almost lost to. Shrek is an ogre and is bred for conflict. I don't know what species Sully, or really any of his friends are, but his life and profession is to inspire fear. But what happens when his foes don't fear him? It should also be noted that Shrek is no stranger to scaring people himself. These two are actually diametrically opposed to one another when you think about it. Sully is a corporate worker with a 9-to-5 job in an apartment, and presumably a salary to go along with it. He scares people to punch a clock every day, and he scares children. Shrek scares groups of adults as a defense mechanism, where the stakes are more serious than an office title. Sully's size advantage over Shrek isn't really that big of a deal either, actually. Shrek has fought much larger creatures than himself in the past. What can a top scarer do against an enemy that is fearless? Sully's job is to go out and essentially annoy kids. Shrek's job for most of his life on the swamp was to repel groups of hostile adults, and he was also very good at it. This isn't to say that Sully would necessarily be scared of Shrek. I think Sully would get a few hits in and probably do some damage with his claws, but I think Shrek would have the ingenuity to use his environment to his advantage and put Sully down. In fact, Shrek and Sully might actually exist in the same universe. Mike Wazowski mentions how the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and the Abominable Snowman are all monsters from their world that ended up banished.
Loch Ness, Bigfoot, the Abominable Snowman. They all got one thing in common, pal. Banishment. We could be next.
The implication here is that human myths of legendary monsters are real and were at one point dwellers in Mike and Sully's world. Could a legendary ogre or dragon also be descendants from someone from their world that was banished? Really, when you think about it, it makes more sense that they are distantly related to one another. However, Sully and all the other inhabitants of his world are simply playing at monster, right down to having to wear odorizer to mirror a real monster's scent.
Hey, can I borrow your odorant?
Yeah, I got smelly garbage or old dumpster.
Maybe at some point in the past, Sully's ancestors were dangerous creatures, but in the current day, the ultimate career someone like Sully can achieve is being a scarer. They are all of them, all bark and no bite. They are domesticated demons that survive off the emotional energy harvested from scared kids to fuel their decadent lifestyles. And Sully's entire arc is to find a more efficient way of doing this in the end by making them laugh instead of scream. While Shrek may have rejected his mantle of leadership, his journey involved pushing himself to his physical limitations and putting himself on the line. There was no slug woman to save Shrek in the end from his final foe. Shrek is not afraid to kill, and Shrek is not afraid to die either, and I haven't seen anything from Sully that lends me to believe the same about him. Sully does have a formal education where Shrek does not, even if he was expelled, but it's not anything that would help him. Mike was the brains of the two.
I know everyone sees us together, they think I'm the one running the show, but the truth is, I've been riding your coattails since day one.
Shrek, by contrast, carried his group. Shrek was the brains and the brawn of his group. Sully could probably fare well against a lesser opponent, but for every strength Sully has, Shrek has him beat. The winner is Shrek. Thanks for watching this. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the thumbs up and subscribing. Also, I have a Patreon now. We're really close to hitting 1,000 subs, and I want to start uploading more often. If you enjoy this type of video, consider sharing this channel or even supporting the channel on Patreon.